I'm proud to be an American. And one of the reasons why I'm proud to be an American is because our culture values the individual. Towards the end of the Pacific War in World War II, a Navy plane was shot down near an island in the Pacific Ocean. The Japanese on this island saw the plane crash, and it crash landed into the water, and they saw two Americans get out of the boat and get into one of those little yellow life rafts. And they were far enough out of the island that the Japanese didn't want to go get them, but they were close enough that they could watch from the tall mountains of this island. And what they saw stupefied them, because the Japanese saw an American submarine come up out of the water right next to these two downed pilots. They saw a rescue take place where the downed pilots were pulled aboard the ship, and even though the Japanese were shelling the submarine and trying to shoot it down, and even though there could have been Japanese airplanes in the air at the time that could see this sitting duck of a submarine and destroy an entire ship with all the men on board, the Americans risked it. They risked it to save those two downed pilots. And some of the Japanese on the island wrote in their diaries about how dumb it was for the Americans to risk so many people just to save two. You see, at the same time, the Japanese culture had kamikaze pilots, where they said, you as an individual are not important. You need to sacrifice yourself for the emperor. And men would get into planes loaded with explosives and crash them in to American ships. And at that same time, an American ship would risk itself to save one pilot from an American plane. The Japanese culture didn't understand that. But for the American culture, it was just ingrained in us. And a big reason why the value of the individual was so important in the American culture during World War II was because we were a Christian nation. You see, Eastern religions with the beliefs in reincarnation and all the gods of Hinduism and the values of Buddhism, it doesn't place the kind of value on the individual that Christianity does. Because at the core of Christianity, we know that Jesus, the Son of God, died for us, for me as an individual, for you as an individual. God said, you are worthy enough to die for. And back in World War II, our culture was a Christian culture. And when we saw each other, even though we had a lot of issues back during that time, we still had that intrinsic value of the individual. The pilot of that plane that was rescued by that submarine right off the shores of a Japanese-occupied island in the Pacific Ocean was George Herbert Walker Bush. He went on to do tons of things in politics. He was in charge of the CIA. He was an ambassador. He was a vice president. He was our president. He was the father to another president. And whether you agree with his politics or not, understand that when the American submarine commander decided to risk his life and the life of all of his men for some random crewman, the Japanese who watched it said that person is not important. But that person who was rescued became the President of the United States. And that's why I'm proud to be an American. That's why I'm proud to be a Christian. Our culture today shames Christians. It tells us that we're homophobic. It tells us that we're awful. It tells us that we're unscientific. It has all these names that it calls at us. And many times as Christians, we just take it. And we are actually a little ashamed of our backwardness. But some of the greatest things in our culture come from the values of Christianity. Christians, true Christians, are willing to die for other people. True Christians love people who are unlovable. True Christians will share their last meal with someone else. Those are universally respected values. So don't be ashamed to be an American or of your nationality. Don't be ashamed to be a Christian. Because being a Christian isn't I'm right and you're wrong. Being a Christian means today I'm going to be as much like Jesus as possible. I'm going to help someone who needs it today. Because who knows? That person that you help today might be the President of the United States in the future. God bless. If you enjoy these little encouragements from history, these little inspirations, feel free to subscribe to the channel and share it with someone who might need a little bit of hope in a dark world. Thank you, and God bless.